There are moments in history when humanity senses that something is not quite right. A quiet uneasiness begins to grow beneath the surface of daily life. People go about their routines, they scroll through their screens, they chase their goals, yet deep inside there is a question that refuses to go away. What if something is about to happen that we are not prepared for? Today, I want you to consider a warning that has been echoing across conversations, across headlines, and across spiritual discussions. The idea that 3 days of darkness are coming in August 2026. Now, before you dismiss this as fear, speculation, or exaggeration, I want you to pause for a moment and think carefully. Throughout history, there have been times when the world was caught completely off guard. There were moments when everything seemed stable, everything seemed predictable, and then suddenly, without warning, everything changed. The question is not whether events can shake the world. We already know they can. The real question is whether people are ready when those moments arrive. Darkness is not only a physical concept, it is also spiritual. It is emotional. It is moral. And when we talk about 3 days of darkness, we are not just talking about the absence of light in the sky. We are talking about a deeper reality that can affect every part of human life. Imagine for a moment what happens when light disappears. Communication systems fail. Cities that never sleep fall silent. People who depend on constant connectivity suddenly find themselves isolated. Fear begins to spread, not because people know what is happening, but because they do not know. Our fear thrives in uncertainty, and uncertainty is exactly what defines moments of sudden global disruption. When people lose control, when systems fail, when the familiar becomes unfamiliar, that is when true character is revealed. Some will panic, some will turn against each other, some will search desperately for answers in places that cannot provide them. But there will also be those who remain steady, those who are anchored, those who understand that even in darkness, there is still a source of light that cannot be extinguished. We live in a time when warnings are often ignored. People hear them, but they do not take them seriously. They assume that everything will continue as it always has. They trust in systems, in technology, in human progress. But history has shown again and again that these things, while useful, are not ultimate. They are not unshakable. They are not permanent. And when something unexpected happens, the illusion of control disappears almost instantly. The idea of 3 days of darkness has captured attention because it speaks directly to this vulnerability. Whether it is interpreted as a physical event, a symbolic warning, or a combination of both, the message behind it is clear. Do not assume that tomorrow will be exactly like today. Do not assume that the systems you rely on will always function perfectly. Do not assume that you have unlimited time to prepare yourself spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. Preparation is not about panic. It is about awareness. It is about understanding that life can change quickly and choosing to be ready instead of being caught off guard. Think about how people prepare for storms. When there is a warning, wise people do not ignore it. They secure what they can. They gather what they need. They make sure they are ready to endure what is coming. The same principle applies here, but on a much deeper level. If darkness were to come, even for a short period of time, it would expose how dependent people have become on external sources of stability. It would reveal how fragile modern life can be. But more importantly, it would reveal where people place their trust. When everything around you is shaken, what remains? When the lights go out, what guides you? When fear rises, what gives you peace? These are not theoretical questions. They are deeply personal ones, and the answers cannot be borrowed from someone else. Each person must confront them individually. Because in moments of crisis, what you truly believe becomes evident. Not what you say you believe, not what you post online, but what is actually rooted inside you. There is a reason why warnings like this resonate so strongly. It is because deep down, people know that the world is not as stable as it appears. They see the signs, rising tensions, increasing uncertainty, rapid changes that no one fully understands. And even if they cannot explain it, they feel that something is shifting, something is building, something is approaching. But here is the important part. Darkness, no matter how intense, is never the final word. Darkness does not create light. It reveals the absence of it. And that means that wherever there is light, darkness cannot overcome it. This is not just a poetic idea. It is a reality that has been proven time and time again. So the real question is not whether darkness can come. The real question is whether you are connected to a source of light that cannot be taken away. Because if your sense of peace depends entirely on circumstances, then when circumstances change, your peace disappears. But if your peace is rooted in something deeper, something unshakable, then even in the midst of uncertainty, you can remain steady. Imagine a world where everything stops for 3 days. No noise, no distractions, no constant flow of information, just silence. For some, that silence would be terrifying. For others, it would be revealing. It would strip away everything that usually fills their minds and force them to confront what is truly inside them. And that is where transformation begins, not in comfort, but in confrontation. Not when everything is easy, but when everything is uncertain. Because it is in those moments that people begin to ask the questions they have been avoiding. It is in those moments that priorities shift. It is in those moments that truth becomes unavoidable. The warning about 3 days of darkness is not just about fear. It is about awakening. It is about shaking people out of complacency. It is about reminding them that life is fragile, that time is limited, and that what truly matters cannot be postponed indefinitely. You cannot control everything that happens in the world. You cannot predict every event. But you can choose how you respond. You can choose where you place your trust. You can choose whether you live in denial or in awareness. And that choice makes all the difference. Because when the unexpected happens, it is not the strongest who survive. It is the prepared. Not just physically, but spiritually. Not just externally, but internally. Those who have taken the time to build a foundation that is not dependent on circumstances are the ones who stand firm when everything else shakes. As we move closer to the future, there will always be voices that warn and voices that dismiss. There will always be those who take things seriously and those who ignore them. But at the end of the day, each person is responsible for their own readiness. If these 3 days of darkness were to come, what would they reveal about you? Would they expose fear, confusion, and dependence on things that cannot last? Or would they reveal strength, clarity, and a connection to something greater than the circumstances around you? This is not about predicting a date or proving a theory. This is about understanding a principle. Darkness can come in many forms, at many times, and often when it is least expected. The wise do not wait for confirmation. They prepare in advance. So instead of asking whether this will happen, ask yourself a better question. If it did happen, would I be ready? Not just with supplies or plans, but with a mindset that is not easily shaken, with a heart that is not easily overcome by fear, with a foundation that remains strong even when everything else is uncertain. Because in the end, it is not the darkness that defines you. It is how you respond to it. And those who are prepared, those who are grounded, those who are connected to a source of unshakable light, they do not collapse when darkness comes. They stand, they endure, and they become a light for others who are searching for direction in the midst of uncertainty. And that is the message you cannot afford to ignore. Not because of fear, but because of truth. Not because of speculation, but because of reality. Darkness may come, but it does not have to overcome you. The choice and the preparation begins now, and when you begin to think about it more deeply, you realize that the concept of sudden darkness is not something new. Humanity has experienced moments where everything changed in an instant, where what seemed certain one day became uncertain the next. The difference now is the scale, the speed, and the level of dependence people have built on systems they cannot control. The modern world has created a sense of security that is largely artificial, and when that illusion is challenged, the reaction is often confusion rather than clarity. People today are more connected than ever before, yet at the same time, they are more fragile than they realize. Remove electricity, remove communication, remove the constant flow of information, and suddenly millions find themselves without direction. It is not because they are incapable, but because they have never been trained to stand without those supports. This is why the idea of 3 days of darkness carries such weight. Not because of the length of time, but because of what it represents. 3 days is long enough to disrupt everything. It is long enough to test patience, to challenge stability, to expose weaknesses. It is long enough for fear to either take control or be overcome. In those hours, people will begin to realize what truly matters and what does not. The things that once seemed urgent will suddenly feel insignificant, and the things that were ignored will become central. Consider how quickly priorities change when comfort is removed. When everything is working, people focus on growth, success, and achievement. But when uncertainty enters, the focus shifts to survival, to safety, to meaning. It is in those moments that people begin to ask deeper questions. Questions about purpose, about truth, about what they have built their lives upon. And that is where the real impact of darkness is felt. Not just in the environment, but in the human heart. Because darkness has a way of stripping away distractions. It removes the noise, the constant stimulation, the endless options, and leaves a person face to face with themselves. And not everyone is ready for that encounter. Some will try to escape it. They will look for any source of distraction, any form of reassurance, anything that can bring back a sense of normalcy. Others will begin to confront realities they have avoided for years. They will recognize that they have invested heavily in things that cannot sustain them in moments of crisis. They will realize that they have built their identity on foundations that are easily shaken. But there will also be a group of people who respond differently. Instead of panic, they will have clarity. Instead of fear, they will have stability. Not because they are unaware of the situation, but because they have already prepared internally for uncertainty. They have developed a mindset that does not depend entirely on external conditions. This kind of preparation does not happen overnight. It is built over time, through intentional choices, through a willingness to face truth even when it is uncomfortable. It requires a person to step away from the illusion that everything will always be easy and to accept that challenges are inevitable. And more importantly, it requires them to establish a foundation that remains strong regardless of circumstances. When darkness comes, it does not create strength. It reveals it. It shows what was already there. If a person has spent their life avoiding difficult questions, avoiding truth, avoiding growth, then those weaknesses will become visible. But if they have invested in understanding and resilience, in something deeper than temporary comfort, then that strength will also be revealed. This is why warnings should not be dismissed lightly. Not because every detail must be accepted without question, but because the principle behind them is valuable. They remind people that life is not guaranteed to remain stable. They encourage reflection, preparation, and awareness. They challenge complacency, and complacency is one of the greatest risks in any generation. It convinces people that they have more time than they actually do. It tells them that preparation can wait, that change is unlikely, that everything will continue as it has. But reality has a way of interrupting that narrative, often when it is least expected. If there were to be a period of complete darkness, even briefly, it would force a global pause. The constant movement, the endless activity, the noise that fills every moment, all of it would stop. And in that stillness, people would be confronted with something they rarely experience: silence. Silence is powerful because it cannot be controlled in the same way noise can. It does not distract, it reveals. It allows thoughts to surface that are usually buried under constant stimulation. It creates space for reflection, for realization, for truth to become clear. For some, that silence would bring peace. For others, it would bring discomfort. Because what you experience in silence often depends on what you carry within you. If your life is built on clarity and purpose, silence can strengthen you. But if it is filled with confusion and avoidance, silence can be overwhelming. This is why preparation is not just about external readiness. It is about internal alignment. It is about ensuring that when everything else is stripped away, you are not left without direction, that you are not dependent on circumstances to define your stability. The idea of darkness also carries a symbolic meaning that cannot be ignored. It represents moments when truth seems hidden, when clarity is lost, when direction is uncertain. And those moments can come in many forms, not just physical events, but personal crises, global challenges, unexpected changes that alter the course of life. In every case, the response matters more than the event itself. Two people can experience the same situation and respond in completely different ways. One may fall into fear and confusion, while the other finds strength and clarity. The difference is not the circumstance, it is the foundation they have built. And this brings us back to the central question: what are you building your life on? Is it something that depends entirely on stability, on predictability, on comfort? Or is it something that can endure even when those things are removed? Because if the world were to face even a short period of darkness, the impact would not be evenly distributed. Those who are unprepared would struggle the most, not just because of the situation, but because of their lack of internal readiness. Those who have taken the time to develop resilience, awareness, and a deeper sense of purpose would navigate it differently. They would not be immune to the challenges, but they would not be controlled by them. They would be able to think clearly, to act wisely, to remain grounded even when others are overwhelmed. And in times of uncertainty, those individuals often become a source of strength for others. This is another important aspect to consider. Preparation is not only for yourself, it also affects those around you. Your response in difficult moments can either increase fear or bring stability. It can either contribute to chaos or provide direction. And that responsibility should not be taken lightly, because in moments when many are searching for answers, those who remain steady naturally become leaders, even if they never intended to be. Their actions, their mindset, their ability to remain calm, all of it influences others. So the idea of 3 days of darkness is not just about an event. It is about a test of readiness, of resilience, of truth. It is an opportunity for people to examine their lives, to identify weaknesses, to make changes while there is still time. And time is something people often misunderstand. They assume there will always be more of it. More time to prepare, more time to change, more time to focus on what truly matters. But the reality is that opportunities for preparation are not unlimited. They must be taken when they are available. This is why awareness matters, because once you become aware of the possibility of disruption, you have a choice. You can ignore it and continue as before, or you can take it seriously and begin to prepare. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. And wisdom is not about knowing every detail of the future. It is about recognizing patterns, understanding principles, and making decisions that position you well regardless of what happens. It is about building a life that is not easily shaken, a mindset that is not easily broken, a sense of direction that is not easily lost. Because whether it is 3 days of darkness or any other form of disruption, the underlying reality remains the same. Life is unpredictable, and those who are prepared will always navigate it better than those who are not. And as you continue to reflect on this, another layer begins to emerge, the realization that people are often far more focused on predicting events than preparing for them. They want exact dates, clear confirmations, undeniable proof. They want certainty before they take anything seriously. But the truth is, life rarely offers that kind of clarity in advance. Most of the time, preparation must happen in the absence of certainty, not after it. This is where many fail. They delay action because they are waiting for perfect confirmation. They tell themselves that if something truly significant were about to happen, there would be no doubt, no confusion, no debate. But history shows the opposite. Before major events, there are always mixed voices, some warning, some dismissing, some uncertain. And in the middle of that noise, individuals must decide for themselves how they will respond. The concept of 3 days of darkness challenges this tendency. It forces a person to think beyond the need for exact details and instead focus on readiness. Because even if the specifics are unclear, the principle remains valid. Sudden disruption is always possible, and those who are prepared do not depend on perfect information to take wise action. There is also something else to consider: how quickly normal life can become unrecognizable. People often assume that change will be gradual, that they will have time to adjust, to respond, to adapt. But some of the most impactful moments in history did not unfold slowly. They happened suddenly, without warning, leaving people to react in real time. If darkness were to come, even briefly, it would not wait for people to feel ready. It would not give them time to gradually prepare. It would arrive, and in that moment, everything would shift. And that is why preparation must happen before, not during. Think about the role of dependence. Modern life has created systems that are incredibly efficient, but also incredibly interconnected. When everything is functioning, it feels seamless. But when one part is disrupted, the effects can spread quickly. Power, communication, transportation. These are not isolated systems. They rely on each other. And when one fails, others can follow. This level of interdependence creates both strength and vulnerability. It allows for incredible advancement, but it also means that disruption can have far-reaching consequences. And this is something many people do not fully consider until they are forced to. In a scenario where darkness affects not just light, but systems, the impact would extend beyond inconvenience. It would challenge routines, expectations, and assumptions. It would force people to adapt quickly, often without clear guidance. And in those moments, mindset becomes everything. Because when external stability is removed, internal stability becomes the only anchor. Those who have trained themselves to remain calm under pressure, to think clearly in uncertainty, to act with intention rather than reaction, they are the ones who navigate such moments more effectively. But this kind of mindset does not develop by accident. It is the result of intentional growth. It requires a person to step outside of comfort, to face challenges willingly, to build resilience before it is required. It is not about eliminating fear entirely, but about learning how to respond to it in a way that does not allow it to take control. Fear itself is not the enemy. It is a natural response to the unknown. But when fear becomes the driving force behind decisions, it leads to chaos, to poor judgment, to actions that often make situations worse. The goal is not to avoid fear, but to manage it, to recognize it without being controlled by it. This is why clarity is so important, because clarity allows a person to see beyond the immediate reaction and consider the bigger picture. It allows them to focus on what can be done rather than what cannot. It shifts the perspective from helplessness to responsibility. And responsibility is a key part of preparation. It is easy to assume that someone else will handle problems, that systems will be restored quickly, that solutions will appear. But true readiness comes from understanding that each person has a role to play in how they respond to challenges. This includes not only practical readiness, but also the ability to support others. Because in times of uncertainty, people look to those around them for guidance. They observe how others react, how they speak, how they carry themselves, and those responses can either amplify fear or bring reassurance. Imagine being in a situation where everything goes dark, where communication is limited, where information is scarce. In that environment, the behavior of individuals becomes even more significant. A calm presence can bring stability to a group. A clear mind can help make better decisions. A steady attitude can prevent panic from spreading. And this is why personal preparation has a collective impact. It is not just about individual survival or stability. It is about contributing to a broader sense of order in the midst of uncertainty. It is about being someone who adds clarity rather than confusion, strength rather than weakness. The idea of darkness also brings attention to something deeper, the contrast between what is seen and what is unseen. When light is present, people rely heavily on what they can see, But when darkness comes, that reliance shifts. Other senses become more important. Awareness changes. Focus sharpens in different ways. This can be understood not only physically, but also mentally and emotionally. When familiar structures are removed, people are forced to rely on deeper instincts, on internal guidance, on principles that are not dependent on external conditions. And those who have developed that internal foundation are better equipped to navigate such shifts. It is also worth considering how people respond to the unknown. Some resist it completely, trying to maintain control at all costs. Others accept it as part of life and learn how to move within it. The difference between these responses can determine how a person experiences challenging situations. Resistance often leads to frustration and panic because it is based on the expectation that things should remain as they are. But acceptance allows for adaptability. It recognizes that change is inevitable and focuses on how to respond effectively rather than how to prevent it entirely. This does not mean becoming passive or indifferent. It means being realistic and prepared. It means understanding that while not everything can be controlled, how you respond always can be. And in a scenario where darkness becomes a reality, even temporarily, that distinction becomes critical. Because those who are adaptable, who can adjust quickly, who can remain focused despite uncertainty, they are the ones who find a way forward. As time moves closer to any potential moment of disruption, the importance of awareness continues to grow. Not in a way that creates constant anxiety, but in a way that encourages intentional living. It is about making choices that strengthen your ability to handle uncertainty rather than ignoring the possibility of it. This includes evaluating where you place your trust, how you manage your thoughts, how you respond to challenges, even now, in everyday situations. Because the way you handle small difficulties often reflects how you will handle larger ones. If you avoid discomfort now, if you rely entirely on convenience, if you resist anything that challenges your sense of control, then sudden disruption will feel overwhelming. But if you have already developed resilience, if you have learned to remain steady in smaller challenges, then you are building the capacity to handle greater ones. And this is the process that many overlook. They focus on the event itself rather than the preparation leading up to it. They want to know what will happen, but they do not spend enough time preparing for how they will respond. But response is everything, because no matter what happens externally, your internal response shapes your experience of it. It determines whether you act with clarity or confusion, whether you contribute to stability or to chaos. And as these thoughts continue to develop, the message becomes increasingly clear. Readiness is not about predicting the exact form of darkness, but about ensuring that no matter what form it takes, you are not unprepared. So now it comes down to this moment, not a moment of fear, but a moment of decision. You have heard the warning, you have understood the possibility, and you have seen what darkness can reveal. But none of it matters unless it changes something within you, because information without action is useless, and awareness without preparation is empty. If there is one truth you must carry from this, it is this: do not wait until darkness comes to discover what you should have built in the light. Do not wait for systems to fail before you realize how dependent you have become on them. Do not wait for fear to rise before you begin to search for stability. The time to prepare is always before, never after, because when everything around you is shaken, there are only two types of people: those who collapse and those who stand. And the difference is not luck, it is not chance, it is not circumstance. The difference is what they built before the moment arrived. The difference is whether they chose comfort over truth, delay over discipline, distraction over direction. You cannot control when or how darkness may come, but you can control who you are when it does. You can choose to be someone who is grounded, someone who is clear, someone who does not lose direction when everything else seems uncertain. You can choose to build a life that is not dependent on what can be taken away. And understand this clearly: darkness does not last forever. It never has, and it never will. But while it is present, it reveals everything. It exposes weakness, but it also reveals strength. It uncovers fear, but it also brings out courage. It tests foundations, and only what is real will remain standing. So do not ignore this moment. Do not push it aside as just another idea, another possibility, another warning that can be dealt with later. Let it challenge you, let it awaken you, let it push you to examine your life honestly and to make the changes that matter while you still can. Because if those days were to come, they will not ask if you're ready. They will not wait for your convenience, they will simply arrive. And when they do, what you have built inside you will be all that you have to stand on. So build wisely, stand firmly, prepare intentionally, and make sure that no matter how deep the darkness may seem, it never has the power to overcome you.